Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast, where Gauri Ramkumar of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Good day, everyone. Our guest today is Tanja Lorber, Senior Technical Editor at Stegmann Systems. Stegmann Systems has been developing database software solutions for the regulated industries. So welcome, Tanja, to Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. I'm fine. Thanks. I hope you are also fine.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, we're all doing good. Thank you. So let's begin our podcast today then.
Great.
Super. So just help me understand a bit more about your role with regard to Stegmann Systems and how is documentation important to your current profile?
So my team is actually pretty new. So the writing team itself was founded 2 years ago as part of a customer success initiative. Mm-hmm. And so we are currently in the process of, let's say, defining our role. And we are 2 writers, both of us quite experienced. Each, my colleague is something like 20 plus years of experience, myself also 20 something. So we are fine-tuning the processes and starting to rework our guides. So it's a pretty exciting journey currently, actually. So because up to then, until our team was founded, the subject matter experts created the guides. But of course, let's say everything can be improved. So we are quite happy to be here and to really build everything up from scratch. So that's quite fascinating.
Great. So how did you get into documentation initially then, Tanja?
It was actually a course that I enrolled during university. So there was a technical writing course and I thought, oh, well, that sounds interesting. And when I started this course, I realized that it's exactly my type of thing. So I'm a little neat freak, and putting everything into boxes and labeling it and having it available, that is exactly what I wanted to do. So I more or less decided on the spot that this is going to be my career.
Fantastic. Great. So to have that clarity straight in the uni days, it's quite hard, I guess.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I didn't think technical writing, don't know what that is. I'm just going to have a look at it. And then it was like, oh, wow, yes, that's me.
Super. So what's your documentation process, and who do you normally get involved in defining such processes?
So our process currently is based on the agile process that our development team is applying. So they are working with Scrum, with the Scrum framework. So they have an agile board and they have their tasks, and they open documentation tasks as they see fit. So if they want to have changed something in the documentation, then they're going to open a corresponding ticket for us. And then we pick the task from the board. We have a look at the feature. If a build is available from the source file, then from the software, then we have a look also at this build. We talk to the product owner, to the subject matter expert. So I think it's more or less like many other writers also do it. You try to understand what is happening, and then try to think of how to get it to your audience, and then talk to everyone involved. And then in the end, you write it down. We are creating PDFs. We want to go to HTML, but currently we are still PDF based. And then we create the PDF and deliver it to our central server. And then everyone can pick it up when he or she needs it.
Okay, great. So when writing such documents or any updates to the documents, what are the important factors you consider?
I'm not sure that I get your question, actually.
Okay, no worries. So what are the important factors to consider when creating documentation for your SaaS business? What do you consider as most important?
Okay. Now I understand where you're going. So for us, it's you already mentioned in the beginning this regulated environment. This is a big challenge for us because let's say our software and everything that is connected to it needs to be qualified. So it needs to be qualified at the user side, at the customer side, that this is the software and everything else that is allowed to be used. So this is really, let's say, it's a challenge for us because any update to documentation, to to user interface design, everything needs to be requalified. So we have to be really, really careful about the type of change that we do and that we deliver to the customer. So this is, I think it's one of the biggest challenges for us here.
Right. Okay. So any documentation you write has to be fully qualified by a team before it gets rolled out.
Yes, exactly. It's even sometimes there are standard operation procedures in place at the customer side. And if we somehow manage to, let's say, invalidate even a little tiny step within this procedure, then everything needs to be requalified. And this is something that we have to be really, really careful with.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, very nice. So you might have partially helped me with this question, but what role does documentation have in your customer service or success strategy? How important is documentation for you?
I would say it's a pretty central role. So my documentation team was founded as part of a customer success initiative that our CEO launched 2 years ago. So we are more or less, the first 2 employees to, let's say, to go in the direction of customer success. But of course, every other role that is related to customer success, marketing, sales, customer support, of course, we need to find a way to incorporate this whole process. So that's, let's say, from the writing side, for example, we are building up a knowledge base. So this is the step that we writers can do, that our documentation can do. We build the knowledge base. But then, of course, our content should also go into the support portal to allow our customers to really search for, let's say, troubleshooting information. So this is also where our documentation content will be used in the end. So it's really the documentation itself is really central to the build-up and to the start of this customer success process.
Very nice. Very good. So do you think it is possible to determine a direct ROI from an investment made into your knowledge base?
That is something I don't think I can't. I don't have an answer for that, I'm afraid.
Okay, so, no worries. Yeah. Do you have you ever measured the return on investment on the documentation you've created in your, not with the current role, but in the previous organizations as well?
In one of my previous organizations, it was measured. But it was not actually in return on investment. That was also the start of the launch of a knowledge base, and we managed to cut the support tickets. I think it was in half through the implementation of this customer knowledge base. So that is from one of my previous employers. So. Yeah, Of course, I hope that this will also be the case here, but we are not there yet. We are on the way, on the journey.
Yeah, to be really honest, many of the interviewers I had in the past, they struggle with this question because documentation is one piece. You will not appreciate it when it's there. But if it's not there, you will understand the importance of it.
Exactly. It's like, okay, that is maybe a little strange connection, but it's like going to the doctors. You never go to the doctors when everything is fine.
Fine, yeah.
You only realize that you need need your doctor when you're sick. So
absolutely,
documentation, it's central, but as nobody is like, okay, well, let's say initiative and here, and so it's but it's good that other people also struggle with this setup.
They do. I mean, there are a few people who relate to the number of support tickets they get with documentation. So the good the documentation is, it reduces the number of support tickets you might get from your customers.
Yeah, I mean, in the ideal way, if the solution is really working, then the customer would not have to open a support ticket at all. Because if, let's say, the knowledge base is working and is answering the questions that can arise during implementing a product, then, you don't have any support tickets because everything will be answered. Yeah. But that is, let's say, the ideal world. I don't think that this is really going to happen like that.
Great. So what's the nature of your documentation? Is it, is it publicly available, or is it only accessible to your customers by logging into some systems?
That is actually not decided yet. So I'm a big fan of having it publicly available, because then if also customers who are interested, they can Google and they can have a look what our content looks like and how much effort we put into it. But I mean, there are pros and cons. Of course, I also had in previous professions, I also had the situation where everything was behind a login, so the customer had to register, because the CEO at that time said, okay, well, it's an added value, and why should we provide this added value to people who did not buy our software? I mean, it's pros and cons, so currently it's not decided yet.
All right, no worries at all. So how often do you update your documentation?
So we plan to be in sync with the software releases. So of course there will be an updated documentation when we put out a new software. So for our main release, that's I think the latest release will come out this year. And then we have, let's say, smaller packages that get updated once a year. So our documentation is in sync with this. With this release cycle. And of course, let's say if there is a typo, of course, we then also make smaller changes in between. So the typo won't be there for 1 year just because the release is not done yet. So that's the maintenance will be done in between.
Oh, okay, great. So I know you mentioned that this current team is just 2 editors or writers, but how big has your team been in the past, or what's the maximum team size you worked with?
Oh, that's a good question. I think the biggest writing team that I ever worked with was something like 28 writers.
Wow. That
was a huge team.
Yeah.
So that was writing and localization combined, but still that was a huge team. And then are you still there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay, because I just got a message, my internet connection is unavailable. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Okay. But so the standard size of technical writing teams is like 5 to 8, I would say. That's the normal size that I've been working with.
All right, that's great. So I think with those questions, we would like to move to the rapid fire round. So who have you learned the most about documentation from in your career?
Other writers.
Okay.
That's definite, because I always find it interesting. Writers come from such diverse backgrounds, and depending on the background that you come from, you have a totally different approach how to structure content and how to explain things. And listening to the colleague who's has this different background, it's so interesting what you can learn from just having a different setup and a different view on things. So that's definitely, I would say other writing colleagues.
Very nice. Can you share a documentation related resource you have consumed recently?
Write the docs. I love this community. That is my go-to community for everything. So it's not only writers. I think they call themselves documentarians, something like this. So you have testers and developers and everyone who is interested in documentation, and you get questions for everything that you stumble upon. So it's really the Write the Docs community is awesome.
Thank you, Write the Docs. So what is that one piece of documentation related advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
Ask questions. I would really say don't be afraid to ask, because if you don't understand what the feature is doing and how the feature is working, then you won't be able to explain it to your audience.
So more questions. Get yourself
questions. When I started, I always was reluctant to ask the same question a second time, and then you let's say you trot along and nothing is really coming together because you didn't understand the feature from the beginning. So I would really say ask, and if you don't understand it, ask again. And that doesn't hurt anyone.
Fantastic. Super. So would you like to add anything else, Tanja, to this podcast?
Actually, no. I was so happy to be invited. So it was the first time ever to be interviewed for a podcast. So thanks so much also for starting this amazing series. I haven't listened to all of the existing episodes, but you managed to gather such an interesting community and such a diverse people. So that's really, thanks so much for getting that to life.
Fantastic. Thank you. I mean, without support from great passionates like yourself, this wouldn't have had, this will not happen. So I should thank writers and editors like you who's willing to make this podcast go and reach other people who wants to take writing as their career.
It's great. It's never you can always learn from others. So it's really good. Thanks a ton.
Fantastic. So thank you once again, Tanja, for joining this Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.